In the language of astrology, what does Jupiter symbolize? Transiting Jupiter as it travels around Earth. Here we are, observing the sun move around us, appear to, through the zodiac, the path of the sun, and Jupiter likewise, and Saturn. We can see these traveling around us. Jupiter, what does it symbolize in this language? Jupiter symbolizes growth and expansion, the opposite of Saturn, which of course is contraction. Jupiter is growth and expansion. It's doing things in a big way. So it's taking whatever activity one's doing and then doing it in a big, big way. So Jupiter is education, but it's higher education. It's education to the point where Jupiter symbolizes wisdom. So Jupiter symbolizes the universities and the courts, the system of religion. All of the world religions are Jupiter things. And the wonderful churches and mosques, these are Jupiter places, as jails and the justice system and the courts, these are Saturn places. Saturn and Jupiter, the two sides, the two faces of the coin that symbolize all of society's structures and systems. Of course, Saturn symbolizes the actual structures. Jupiter symbolizes the pomp and the ceremony and the opulence that accompanies this. So Jupiter's all about generosity, whether it's generosity of spirit or generosity with finances, it's generosity with energy. And many, many times it's overdoing things, taking things too far. Jupiter, in many ways, I often think of it transiting Jupiter, that is. As we observe it transiting through the chart, it's almost like a Santa Claus, large and fat and jolly and gift-giving, and associated with celebration and partying and social activity. This is Jupiter, and Jupiter can go overboard with these. But it's the planet of prosperity. And to see how wealthy a person is, one would look to Jupiter in the birth chart to see where Jupiter is situated, what sign and what house, and how it's aspecting the other planets and the sun and the moon. So as Jupiter symbolizes prosperity, Saturn symbolizes thrift. As Jupiter symbolizes wealth and opulence, Saturn symbolizes poverty and a strict approach to materialism voluntarily. So we have this Jupiter-Saturn energy. Jupiter's all about largeness and increasing and in doing things in a big, big way. Sometimes it's simply good times. When Jupiter is favorably aspected Mercury in a birth chart, it usually indicates someone with a highly degreed person, someone with a degree from the university level of training and study. Jupiter's associated with philosophy and religion and long-distance travel, the legal systems, the court systems. It's associated with teaching, and it's associated with horses. Jupiter in Sagittarius. Jupiter rules the sign Sagittarius, just as Saturn rules a Capricorn and is very much in sync with Capricorn energies. The planet Saturn. Jupiter is considered to be the ruler in classical astrology with Sagittarius, the sign of freedom and travel. Ninth house things, legal things, religious things, philosophical perspectives, long-distance travel, interaction with people from faraway countries who have traveled far. All of these are Jupiter activities and Jupiter things. When Jupiter sits on the ascending sign at birth, we'll either see a person who's very jolly and very generous and potentially overweight or large person. When Jupiter, for example, is in the 5th house of a person's birth chart, there's usually many children because this is the house of children and what we create, the 5th house. The house of children and teaching children. So when Jupiter's in the 5th house of someone's birth chart, they're either a teacher of children or they have many children of their own. Where Jupiter travels is usually the other side of the coin of where Saturn travels. So where Jupiter's traveling in your chart by transit at a given time, when you know where it is and you know what the houses refer to, this is where the growth and the expansion is meant to take place that particular time, that year. Where Saturn travels is where you're meant to be responsible and careful and focused on your structures in a sensible, careful way, a disciplined way. Saturn's all about discipline. Jupiter's all about the opposite of discipline, growth and fun and overdoing. It's usually quite a cushion when we see transiting Saturn traveling through your chart, forming favorable angles. It will show up when you're either going on a holiday or having a little extra money come in or doing something that in some way is pleasurable for you. The Jupiter transits usually last about 1 week, normally. So this is Jupiter, the symbolism of Jupiter. Robes and opulence that the Pope wears when you think of religion and you think of Jupiter. When you think of the higher professors in a university and at graduation time, the robes they wear, the ceremony, all of this is Jupiter activity. And being overindulgent in any way, whether it's overworking, overcommitting, overeating, overspending, this is Jupiter activity, anytime we're doing anything overly. So this is the symbolism of Jupiter.